The massive windows of Space Station Unity offered a breathtaking view of Earth below, but Tom barely noticed it anymore. After 6 months of working as a maintenance engineer on the station, even the sight of his home planet had become routine. What wasn't routine, however, was the flood of alien diplomats currently filling the station's corridors for the annual Interstellar Scientific Conference. Tom wiped his forehead with his sleeve as he finished repairing a climate control panel. The extra visitors meant extra work, especially with all their different atmospheric needs. He gathered his tools, ready to move on to his next task, when something caught his eye. The corridor suddenly lit up with a soft, purple glow. Tom turned around and nearly dropped his toolbox. Walking down the hallway was the most striking being he had ever seen. She was tall, almost 7 feet in height, with crystalline skin that seemed to capture and release light with every movement. Her form was humanoid but refined to artistic perfection, as if a master sculptor had carved her from living diamond. Small fragments of light danced around her as she walked, creating an aurora of colors that followed in her wake. Ambassador Luna of the Lumina. Tom heard someone whisper. He noticed other aliens pressing themselves against the walls, bowing their heads deeply as she passed. Even the mighty warrior priests of Taurus, with their enormous horned heads and battle-scarred armor, lowered their eyes in her presence. Tom stood there, tool belt hanging loosely from his hand, unable to look away. There was something about her that went beyond her physical beauty. Despite being surrounded by dozens of beings, she seemed lonely. As she passed by, her crystalline eyes met his for just a moment. Tom didn't bow or step aside. Instead, he smiled. A simple, friendly human smile. The ambassador's steps faltered for just a fraction of a second, and Tom could have sworn he saw the colors around her shift to a warmer hue. "Put your eyes back in your head, buddy," came a familiar voice. Mike, the human head of station security, appeared beside Tom and gave him a friendly punch in the shoulder. "That's Ambassador Luna. The Luminans are practically royalty in the galactic community. Their species figured out faster than light travel, while we were still arguing about whether the Earth was flat." "She seems lonely," Tom said, still looking in the direction she had gone. Mike laughed. "Lonely? The Luminans? They're the most respected species in known space. Their technology, their art, their architecture, everything they do is perfect. Nobody even dares to approach them without going through 17 layers of diplomatic protocols." Tom shrugged, picking up his tools. "Perfect doesn't mean happy. Did you see how everyone just moved away from her? Like she was radioactive or something. That's called respect, Tom. Or fear. Same thing out here in space, mostly." Mike checked his tablet. "Speaking of respect, you've got a clogged filter in the Arthaxian delegation's quarters. Better handle that before they start molting early from the humidity." As Tom headed off to his next job, his mind kept drifting back to Ambassador Luna. He thought about Earth's history, about all the artificial barriers humans had built between themselves over the centuries. Class, status, wealth. They'd seemed unbreakable at the time, until someone had the courage to reach across them. Maybe some things were universal, even across the stars. Maybe what looked like an untouchable alien ambassador was just someone who'd never had the chance to have a normal conversation. Tom smiled to himself as he worked. The conference would last 2 more weeks. Maybe, just maybe, he'd get another chance to see her. And this time, he might do more than just smile. After all, he was human. Taking chances was what his species did best. The next few days on Space Station Unity taught Tom a lot about Luminan culture, though not from any direct contact. Instead, he learned by watching and listening as he went about his maintenance duties. The more he learned, the more interesting and complicated everything became. "They're living crystals," explained Bill, an older technician who had worked on diplomatic stations for 20 years. They sat together in the station's cafeteria, watching as Ambassador Luna ate alone at a table, other species keeping a respectful distance of at least 30 feet. "Their whole society is built like a crystal lattice. Every person has their exact place, their exact role. No deviation. Tom watched as Luna delicately consumed what looked like pure light from a transparent cube. But that's just their culture, right? Not actual laws or anything. Bill nearly choked on his coffee. Might as well be laws. Look over there. He pointed to a group of Zentari scientists, their tentacled heads swaying nervously. Those guys invented quantum tunneling. Brilliant minds, but they'd rather eat their own tentacles than approach Illuminant without proper clearance. And what's proper clearance? Tom asked, still watching Luna. Even in the harsh cafeteria lighting, she seemed to glow from within, creating subtle rainbows on the walls around her. First, you need approval from your species' diplomatic court. Then you need permission from the Luminant Lower Council. Then the Middle Council. Then you wait about 6 months for a response. If you're lucky, you might get a 5-minute audience. Bill shook his head. And that's just for official business, social interaction. Forget about it. Tom noticed something interesting. Every few minutes, Luna would look up from her meal, her crystalline eyes scanning the room as if hoping to catch someone's gaze. But everyone else always looked away quickly. Later that day, Tom was fixing a lighting panel in the station's arboretum when he saw her again. Luna stood among the earth roses, her crystalline form creating prisms that scattered tiny rainbows across the petals. She seemed different here, more relaxed, with her formal diplomatic robes exchanged for simpler attire that still put any human fashion to shame. She didn't notice him at first, and Tom took the moment to observe. She was touching the roses gently, almost longingly. Then she did something that surprised him. She looked around quickly to see if anyone was watching, and when she thought she was alone, she leaned in and smelled one of the roses, her face showing pure joy. "They smell nice, don't they?" Tom said before he could stop himself. Luna jerked upright, the colors around her flashing briefly to a startled red before settling back to their usual purple. She stared at him, and for a moment, Tom thought he'd made a horrible mistake. But then something unexpected happened. The colors around her shifted to a soft blue, and her crystalline features formed what might have been a smile. "They do," she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We have nothing like them on my world." Just then, a group of alien diplomats entered the arboretum. Seeing Luna, they immediately began backing away, bowing deeply. The moment was broken. Luna's posture straightened, her colors returned to their formal purple, and she glided away without another word. Tom watched her go, thinking about that brief moment when she'd let her guard down. He remembered what his mother always said, "Everyone's just people, Tom. Some are just better at hiding it than others." As he finished fixing the lighting panel, Tom made a decision. Protocol or no protocol, 6-month waiting period or not, he was going to talk to her again. Because in that brief moment with the roses, he hadn't seen an untouchable alien ambassador. He'd just seen someone who wanted to enjoy a flower's scent without having to look over her shoulder first. Sometimes, he thought, the biggest diplomatic incidents started with the smallest acts of kindness. Tom couldn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about Luna's reaction to the roses, how different she seemed when she thought no one was watching. After tossing and turning for hours, he got up and went to the station's digital library. "Computer, show me everything about Luminant architecture," he said, remembering that was Luna's specialty. The holographic display filled with images of crystal cities that seemed to grow from the ground like beautiful geometric flowers. The more he read, the more fascinated he became. "You're up late," Mike said, making his security rounds. He looked at the floating images. "Don't tell me you're still thinking about the ambassador." Tom pointed to a particularly beautiful crystal tower. "Did you know they don't just build their buildings? They sing to crystals to make them grow. It's like architecture meets music meets science." Mike sat down beside him, shaking his head. "Tom, buddy, you're going to get yourself in trouble." Yesterday, a Centaurian diplomat bowed so low to the ambassador that he sprained his back. That's how serious this is. But look at this. Tom switched to another image. Their buildings have these special rooms called echo chambers where they go to be alone and think. Every Luminan has one. Don't you think that's weird for a species that supposedly doesn't need anyone? What's weird is you doing architectural research at 3 a.m., Mike replied, but he looked interested despite himself. What's your point? My point is, Tom said, maybe we've all got them wrong. Maybe all this formality isn't what they want. It's just what everyone expects from them. The next day, Tom was fixing a water recycler near the arboretum when he heard it, a sound like crystal wind chimes in a gentle breeze. He peeked around the corner and saw Luna alone again, but this time she was doing something he'd never expected. She was singing to a small crystal she held in her hands. As her song continued, the crystal began to grow and change shape, forming into what looked like a tiny version of one of those towers he'd seen in the library. The lights around her danced with her voice, creating a beautiful display of colors. Then she stopped suddenly and crushed the tiny crystal in her hand, looking around nervously. Tom quickly pretended to be very interested in his water recycler. "You can come out," she said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. "I saw your reflection in the window." Tom stepped out, feeling embarrassed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to spy." "That was amazing, though. The way you made that crystal grow." Luna's colors shifted to a soft pink he hadn't seen before. "It's nothing special, just a simple growth pattern. Any Luminan child could do it." "I couldn't do it," Tom said with a smile. "The best I can do is fix broken pipes and climate controls." "That has its own worth," Luna said, then added quietly, "At least you can do something useful. I just look pretty and make everyone nervous." Tom was surprised by her honesty. "Is that why you come here? To practice architecture without making anyone nervous?" Luna's colors darkened slightly. "I shouldn't be talking about this. It's not proper." "What if I promise not to tell anyone?" Tom said. "I mean, who would believe me anyway?" "Hey everyone, guess what? I had a normal conversation with the great Ambassador Luna. They'd think I was crazy." That made her laugh, an unexpected sound like tinkling crystal that made the lights around her dance. Then she quickly covered her mouth, looking shocked at her own reaction. But Tom just smiled. "You know, I've been reading about Luminan architecture. I'd love to hear more about it sometime. You know, if it's not too improper." Luna looked at him for a long moment, her crystalline eyes seeming to study him. Finally, her colors shifted to that soft blue he'd seen before. Perhaps it wouldn't be completely improper to discuss architecture. For educational purposes, of course. "Of course," Tom agreed, trying not to grin too widely. "Purely educational." As he walked away, Tom couldn't help but feel proud. He'd just had a real conversation with Luna. And the station hadn't exploded. Sometimes, he thought, being human meant knowing when to ignore the rules, especially the ones that kept people apart. The news spread through Space Station Unity faster than a hull breach alert. The human maintenance worker and Ambassador Luna had been seen talking. Actually talking, not just exchanging formal greetings or diplomatic pleasantries. Tom noticed the stares as he walked through the corridors. The Zentari scientists whispered among themselves, their tentacles twitching in excitement. The Taurus warriors watched him with a mixture of shock and respect. Even the station's human crew treated him differently. "You've started quite the scandal," Mike told him during lunch. "The Arthaxian ambassador asked me if humans had some secret diplomatic powers they hadn't revealed yet." Tom laughed. "I just talked to her about architecture. It's not like I proposed marriage or anything." "You might as well have," Bill chimed in, joining them with his coffee. "The betting pool says you'll either end up with a diplomatic medal or get spaced out in airlock." Tom was about to respond when the cafeteria suddenly went quiet. Luna had entered, and as usual, everyone gave her a wide berth. But this time, something was different. Instead of sitting at her usual isolated table, she walked directly toward them. The entire cafeteria seemed to hold its breath. Mike choked on his sandwich. Bill's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. "Good afternoon, Tom," Luna said, her voice carrying clearly in the silent room. "I found some interesting Earth books about crystal formations in your database. Would you like to discuss them?" Tom could feel hundreds of eyes on him. But looking at Luna, he saw something in her crystalline features, a hint of nervousness, maybe even fear of rejection. Her colors flickered slightly, showing her uncertainty. "I'd love to," he said, standing up. "I got a break now, if you're free." They walked together to the Arboretum, leaving behind a cafeteria full of stunned observers. As soon as they were alone among the plants, Luna's colors shifted to a more relaxed blue. "I apologize if I caused you any trouble," she said. "I know it's not traditional for a Luminan to approach someone so directly." Tom smiled. "I'm not big on tradition. Besides, I think you just made me the most popular maintenance worker in the galaxy." "You're different from the others," Luna said, studying him. "Everyone else treats me like I'm made of sacred crystal that might shatter if they breathe wrong. But you just treat me like a person. Aren't you?" Tom asked simply. Luna was quiet for a moment, her colors shifting through thoughtful shades of purple and blue. "In all my diplomatic travels, no one has ever asked me that question." She turned to face him directly. "Do you know why I chose to study architecture?" Tom shook his head. "Because buildings don't bow to you. They don't scramble to get out of your way. They just are." She created a small crystal in her hand, letting it grow into a delicate spiral. "When I create, I'm not Ambassador Luna. I'm just Luna." "Well, just Luna," Tom said with a grin. "Would you like to tell me about that spiral you're making?" She spent the next hour explaining crystal growth patterns to him, becoming more animated as she talked. Tom didn't understand half the technical terms she used, but he loved watching her enthusiasm. Her colors became brighter, more vibrant, and she actually laughed several times, a sound that made the nearby flowers sparkle with reflected light. As his break was ending, Tom gathered his courage. "You know, there's a concert in the station's main hall tomorrow. Some Earth classical music. Would you like to?" "Ambassador," a horrified voice interrupted. A group of diplomatic aides stood at the Arboretum entrance, looking scandalized. "The Centaurian delegation is waiting for their scheduled meeting." Luna's colors instantly shifted back to their formal purple, but before she left, she turned to Tom and said quietly, "I'd like to hear more about this Earth music, perhaps tomorrow." As she glided away, Tom couldn't help but smile. He'd just managed what no other being in the station had done. He'd made a date with a living crystal. Sort of. Sometimes, he thought, the best diplomatic breakthroughs happen by accident. The day of the concert arrived, bringing with it more drama than Tom had expected. First came the official protest from the Centaurian Diplomatic Corps, claiming that unauthorized social interaction with a Luminan ambassador threatens galactic stability. Then came the worried message from Earth's diplomatic office, asking if Tom was trying to start an interstellar incident. "You've really stirred up the cosmic ant nest," Mike said, showing Tom the latest station reports on his tablet. 3 species have requested emergency cultural sensitivity training. The Arthaxians are molting from stress. Tom was fixing a ventilation panel when a group of young Taurus warriors approached him. He tensed, remembering their fearsome reputation, but they surprised him by bowing. "Teach us your human courage," their leader said earnestly. "We who face death in battle, yet we cannot speak to a Luminan as you do." "There's no secret," Tom tried to explain. "I just talk to her like a normal person." The Taurus warriors looked at each other in confusion. Like a normal person. They repeated the phrase as if it was the most profound wisdom they'd ever heard. Later, in the station's main hall, Tom found himself facing an unexpected problem. Luna was already there, creating small ripples of movement among the gathered crowd, but protocol dictated that no one could sit within 30 feet of the Luminan ambassador. Tom looked at the empty space around her and made a decision. He walked straight to her row. Mind if I sit here? He asked, pointing to the seat next to her. Luna's colors shifted rapidly through several shades before settling on a please blue. I would like that, she said softly. As Tom sat down, he heard gasps from around the hall. A Zentari scientist actually fainted, their tentacles going limp with shock. But then something unexpected happened. A young human scientist from the biology department stood up and moved closer to their row. Then a Taurus warrior did the same. Slowly, others began filling in the empty spaces, though still maintaining a respectful distance. This is highly irregular, Luna whispered, but her colors were dancing with excitement. Is that a bad thing? Tom asked. Before she could answer, the music began. The Earth Symphony started playing Mozart, and Tom watched in amazement as Luna's colors began to shift and flow with the music. Each note created ripples of color around her, turning her into a living light show. It's beautiful, a nearby Zentari whispered, their tentacles swaying to the music. Like a crystal aurora. During the intermission, Tom noticed more beings approaching Luna. They were nervous and formal, but they were approaching. A Zentari scientist asked her about crystal harmonics. A Taurus warrior complimented her color patterns. Each time, Luna's surprise and pleasure showed in her shifting colors. I don't understand, Luna said to Tom quietly. They've never. This isn't. Maybe they just needed someone to go first, Tom suggested. Sometimes that's all it takes. One person to show it's okay to break the rules. Luna turned to him, her crystalline features soft in the concert hall's light. Is that why you did it? Why you first spoke to me? Tom smiled. Actually, I spoke to you because you looked lonely, and because I wanted to know the person behind all that diplomatic crystal. Luna's colors shifted to that soft pink he'd seen before. And what did you find? Someone who loves architecture, enjoys earth roses, laughs at bad jokes, and lights up like a rainbow when she hears Mozart. Tom grinned. Seems like a normal person to me. The music started again, but this time Luna did something unprecedented. She created a small crystal in her hand and let it grow in time with the music, putting on a display of light and color for everyone nearby. The crystal told its own story, one of barriers breaking down and new connections forming. As Tom watched the amazed faces around them, he realized something important. Sometimes the biggest changes in the galaxy didn't come from grand diplomatic gestures or official protocols. Sometimes they came from simple things, like asking someone if they'd like to hear some music. The success of the concert evening had created quite a stir on Space Station Unity. Over the next few days, Tom noticed how other species began holding their heads a little higher when passing Luna in the corridors. They still bowed, but their greetings became warmer, less fearful. But Tom had something bigger on his mind. The station's annual Unity Day celebration was approaching, the biggest social event of the year. He'd been planning to ask Luna to go with him, but now that the moment was getting closer, his courage was wavering. You're really going to do it, aren't you? Mike asked, watching Tom pace back and forth in the maintenance office. You're going to ask Ambassador Luna to be your date for Unity Day. Is it crazy? Tom stopped pacing. Maybe it's crazy. She's probably already going as the official Luminan representative anyway. Bill looked up from his repair manual. Kid, you've already broken every diplomatic protocol in the book. Might as well go for broke. Tom found Luna in her usual spot in the Arboretum. She was teaching a small group of fascinated Zentari scientists how to grow simple crystals. Her colors were bright and happy as she demonstrated the technique. The key is the harmony between thought and crystal, she was explaining. You must. Oh, hello, Tom. Her colors shifted to that now familiar warm pink when she saw him. The Zentari scientists hurriedly bowed to them both and backed away, though not as far as they would have a week ago. Tom waited until they were alone among the roses. Luna, I wanted to ask you something, he began, his heart pounding. About Unity Day. Oh yes, she said, her colors dimming slightly. I'm required to attend as the Luminan representative. 4 hours of formal greetings and diplomatic procedures. What if? Tom took a deep breath. What if you went differently this time? Not as the Luminan representative, but as my date. The lights around Luna froze. For a moment, all her colors vanished, leaving her pure crystal clear. Then suddenly, she exploded into a rainbow of colors so bright that the roses around them sparkled like diamonds. "Your date?" she asked, her voice chiming with confusion. "I don't understand the term in this context." Tom realized he needed to explain. On Earth, when someone likes spending time with another person, they ask them to go to special events together. As companions, friends, sometimes more than friends. Luna's colors swirled in complex patterns. But there are no protocols for this. No diplomatic precedents. No formal procedures for a Luminan ambassador to attend a function as a date. "Maybe that's a good thing," Tom said gently. "Maybe sometimes the best things happen without protocols." Luna was quiet for a long moment, her colors shifting through thoughtful patterns. "In all my years as an ambassador, no one has ever asked me to simply attend something. As myself, not as a representative." "Well," Tom smiled, "there's a first time for everything." Just then, they realized they had an audience. Beings from various species had gathered at the Arboretum entrance, watching the scene unfold. Among them were the Centauri scientists, the young Taurus warriors, and even some human crew members. Luna looked at the crowd, then back at Tom. Her colors settled into a determined pattern he'd never seen before, a mixture of blue, pink, and gold. "Yes," she said clearly, her voice carrying through the Arboretum. "I would like to attend Unity Day as your date, Tom." The crowd erupted in cheers. The Centauri scientists waved their tentacles in celebration. The Taurus warriors let out their ceremonial battle cries. Someone started clapping, and soon the whole Arboretum was filled with the sounds of various species expressing joy in their own ways. Luna's colors danced with happiness, creating miniature auroras all around them. "I should warn you," she said softly to Tom. "This will cause quite a diplomatic sensation." Tom grinned. "Good thing I'm just a maintenance worker. No diplomatic reputation to worry about." As the news spread through the station like wildfire, Tom couldn't help but feel proud. He'd just done what no being in the galaxy had ever done before, asked a Luminan ambassador on a date. And she'd said yes. Unity Day arrived with all the excitement of a supernova. Space Station Unity's main hall had been transformed into a spectacular celebration space, with decorations representing every member species of the galactic community. Tom waited nervously by the entrance, wearing his best formal uniform. Mike had helped him polish every button until it shone. "Relax," Mike said, adjusting Tom's collar. "You've already done the hard part. You asked her out, and she said yes." Then Luna arrived, and every being in the entrance hall stopped moving. She wasn't wearing her usual diplomatic robes. Instead, she had shaped her crystalline form into something that looked like a combination of Earth formal wear and Luminan traditional patterns. Light danced around her in precisely controlled patterns, creating a display that made the station's decorations look dull in comparison. "You look amazing," Tom said simply. Luna's colors shifted to that special pink that Tom now knew was only for him. "I studied Earth formal events. I wanted to fit in." As they entered the main hall together, the crowd's reaction was unlike anything the station had ever seen. The usual formal atmosphere of Unity Day dissolved into excited whispers and pointing. Several diplomatic aides were frantically checking their protocol manuals, looking for guidance on this unprecedented situation. But then something wonderful happened. A young Centauri scientist approached them, tentacles trembling slightly. "Ambassador Luna," they said, "would you show us how you created that light pattern? It's fascinating from a scientific perspective." Before Luna could respond with the usual formal diplomatic answer, Tom gave her hand a gentle squeeze. She paused. Then her colors brightened. "Actually," she said, "it's a simple harmonic resonance pattern." Here, let me show you. She created a small demonstration, making lights dance between her crystals. Soon they had a small crowd around them, with beings from different species asking questions and making comments. Luna was teaching a Taurus warrior how to appreciate crystal harmonics, while a human scientist took notes. "I don't understand," came a stern voice. They turned to see the Centaurian chief diplomat approaching. "This is most irregular." A Luminan ambassador engaging in casual conversation, teaching others. "This goes against everything we know about your species." Luna's colors dimmed for a moment, but then she straightened up. "Actually," she said clearly, "this is exactly what my species does." Everyone went quiet. "You see," Luna continued, her voice gaining strength, "Luminans are teachers and artists at heart. All these formal protocols, they're not our creation. Other species began treating us this way centuries ago, and we just went along with it. We didn't want to disappoint anyone's expectations." The crowd murmured in surprise. Tom grinned. "So all this time?" "All this time," Luna said, her colors dancing with amusement, "we've been maintaining a tradition that nobody actually wanted. Back home, we're quite social. We have crystal growing competitions, light pattern concerts, architecture demonstrations." The Centaurian chief diplomat looked like he might faint. But the sacred protocols were never sacred to begin with," Luna finished. She turned to Tom. "It took a human maintenance worker to help me remember that. Someone who didn't know he was supposed to be intimidated by me." The music started playing, and Luna turned to Tom. "Would you like to dance? I've been practicing earth movements." "I'd love to," Tom said, "though I should warn you, I'm not very good at it." "Neither am I," Luna laughed, her crystal chimes mixing with the music. "But I think that's the point. We all have to start somewhere." As they danced, Tom noticed other species beginning to mingle more freely. A Taurus warrior was showing the Centauri scientist their traditional dance moves. The Centaurian chief diplomat was actually laughing at a human's joke. "Look what you started," Luna said softly, her colors creating a private light show just for them. "Me?" Tom smiled. "I just asked a pretty girl if she wanted to talk about architecture." Luna's colors shifted to the deepest pink he'd ever seen, and broke about 1,000 years of unnecessary tradition in the process. As they danced under the stars visible through the station's dome, Tom realized something important. Sometimes the greatest achievements in galactic diplomacy didn't come from careful negotiations or formal protocols. Sometimes they came from simply having the courage to ask. **The end**.